Blog Talk Radio.
Wallach on Law examines criminal cases and criminal justice and asks the question, we are tough on crime, but is that helping? Can we be smarter and make us safer?
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Ian Wallach is a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer in Los Angeles and New York. His cases have ranged from defense of the accused to the prosecution of governments in their treatment of convicts. He's a former Los Angeles deputy public defender and a frequent contributor on legal issues to radio and television shows nationwide.
You're out of order! You're out of order! The whole trial is out of order!
We're going to need a bigger vote, country. Our courts are the great levelers. In our courts, all men are created equal.
This is Wallach on Law. Here's your host, Ian Wallach.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for checking in and joining us today. We have a very exciting show set for it. We're going to be continuing our discussion of the conditions of LA County jails. This is international news, and for that we plan to have some absolutely incredible guests, and it's a very exciting show. Gloria Allred is scheduled to call in today. We understand there's been a minor bump. She might have to come on another week, but we're going to see. Actually, we hope she's going to call, and we welcome her when she does. She's a champion of civil rights and equality, and she has set her sights recently on LA County jails and its treatment of the mentally ill. We also are going to have Honorable Terry Smerling. We spoke about Terry Smerling in our previous episode. This man was ahead of the game in calling and basically asking that we reconsider the way that we treat mentally ill people who are caught up in LA's criminal justice system. Now, let's talk about the crisis at LA County jails. And I'm a little bit biased in this regard. I represent indigent defendants in the county of Los Angeles. I'm a former public defender, and I currently get state-appointed cases. Now, what this means is that I get hired by the state to represent people who can't afford to hire a competent attorney on their own. And that makes up about 95% of the people who are caught up in the criminal justice system. All of my clients have been in LA County jails. LA County has the largest jail system in the USA. It houses over 22,000 people. Most of my clients have passed through one jail in particular called Men's Central Jail. Now, this is a jail. It is not a prison. And here's the difference, because it's crucial. Jails are operated by cities. They're intended to house low-level offenders, misdemeanor offenders, people awaiting trial. Prisons are state facilities that house serious offenders that we call felons. Now, Men's Central Jail, this specific jail presently houses over 7,000 people, and that is far beyond capacity. 57% of these people are not convicted. Okay, they're still presumed innocent. These are people awaiting trial. Why should we care about anyone caught up in this jail? Well, consider this. Let's say you have a drink on a Friday. You're driving home, and an officer thinks you might have driven while intoxicated, and you get arrested. And you can't put up a deed, and you can't fork out the $3,000 or $5,000 for bail. You might spend your weekend at Men's Central Jail, and longer if the magistrate doesn't let you out later. And now we have a big problem in California prisons being overcrowded, so jails, like Men's Central Jail, house this overflow. You would spend that weekend with all levels of criminal offenders. Now I currently have clients who are asking for deals that allow them to get out of Men's Central Jail and go to prison. These are like tough guys. These are people who either have criminal convictions or are facing substantial charges, and they're saying, no, I don't want to be here in Men's Central. I feel more comfortable, safer in prison. The ACLU has been calling for the closure of Men's Central Jail for years. This year, Mother Jones magazine listed Men's Central Jail as first in its list of the 10 worst jails in America. Now, the ACLU has been calling for its closure for years. In early June, the Department of Justice, and we're not talking about some, hippie left-wing organization. We're talking about the Department of Justice. They issue a report calling the conditions of Men's Central Jail deplorable and state that they, open quote, present rather than prevent a risk of suicide. This became international news, with the BBC stunned that this could happen in America, let alone in a major metropolitan city like Los Angeles. Now, the FBI was conducting a secret investigation into Men's Central Jail and inmate treatment, and as a result of this investigation, 21 Los Angeles County Sheriff's officers were indicted and are facing trial on charges of violating civil rights of inmates at Men's Central Jail. The FBI was doing a secret investigation into the jail. They were using inmates for informants. Sheriff's deputies found out that one inmate was an FBI informant. The FBI was coming in to extract him. these deputies, per the allegations, but one person's already acknowledged them, they purposefully hid that inmate, changed computer records, changed his name, hid him from the FBI so they could interrogate him. That trial is going on now. How can the conditions of a low-level jail in a major metropolitan city be this terrible? And what needs to happen to bring about change? Now, that DOJ report also talked primarily, in large part, about the conditions for the mentally ill individuals who are housed there. And let's talk really quickly about the mind of the mentally ill. Now, these are people who, by definition, think differently, so we call them mentally ill. And since thought leads to actions, they act differently. They act outside of societal norms. And acting outside of societal norms is what we call criminal behavior. So these are not people necessarily associated with greed or aggression or dishonesty, but for mentally ill, these are mentally ill people. These are people who think differently, and they can't control their actions, and there are treatment facilities available that are successful alternatives to incarceration. And to talk about that, we're going to speak with Judge Terry Smerling. Now, Judge Smerling is a member of the bar of the LA Superior Court. His opinions here are his own. They're not representative of any person or entity. Now, the Department of Justice called these conditions deplorable, stating that they have contributed to a rise in inmate suicides, 15 in the past 30 months. They say that they are rat-infested, vermin-infested, and mental health treatment inside the prisons is far from what is necessary. And a few days prior to the DOJ report, Judge Smerling wrote an opinion piece for the LA Times. And he talked about this current plan. He's going to discuss it here a little more, to spend $2.3 billion, that's with a B, to build a large facility to house mentally ill patients or inmates is completely unproductive. And he quoted, "Instead of spending large amounts on a better jail experience for them, we should spend money on local treatment programs that would keep low-risk offenders with mental illness out of jail." I am very, very pleased to welcome to the show Judge Smerling. Judge Smerling, are you here?
I am. I'm here.
Oh, Judge Smerling, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to sort of begin with a broader question, which is, why should people care about the well-being of mentally ill inmates?
Well, they could be anybody's relative. They're people that have the misfortune of suffering mental illness. There's a very high percentage of our population that suffers mental illness, and unfortunately, many of them end up incarcerated. Now, I might also add that largely the reason these people are in custody, they've been arrested, is because they've either committed small thefts that, when they accumulate over the years, can become felonies, or also that they've committed drug possession crimes because they're self-medicating. These are not heinous offenders. These are people that have committed fairly minor crimes, but they find themselves incarcerated. And it's very well known in psychiatry that the mentally ill fare far worse in custody than do normal people. They deteriorate.
And when you say fare far worse, that means
it means they deteriorate. Their mental condition deteriorates. They become worse. Their condition becomes aggravated.
And if their condition becomes aggravated, and if their condition contributed to their conduct, it's fair to say, or I guess we could suggest that we're actually making these people who may or may not mean to be dangerous more dangerous by incarcerating them.
Well, I wouldn't use the word dangerous, but I think it's more likely they're going to reoffend and be involved in our system again at enormous cost, I might add. It's extremely expensive to lock somebody up, especially somebody with a mental illness. And it's also, and locking them up does nothing to fix the problem. I mean, what they need is treatment. They need treatment out of custody for the most part. And by the way, the treatment is far less expensive than is incarceration. So to me, the current system is mindless. The idea of building 3,000 mental health beds in a new county jail is mindless. We don't need that many beds. We need
what is this?
Slots.
You were commenting on a proposal to build. I guess it's part of a proposal to build a super prison. Could you explain a little bit about what this present movement is, what this idea is to fix the problem at Men's Central as it relates to mentally ill?
The Board of Supervisors has been contemplating this problem of the Men's Central Jail for over 10 years, and just recently, within the last month or so, they've approved a plan to build a brand new enormous jail in the place of the men's central jail, and that enormous new jail would include 3,000 beds for the mentally ill.
Okay. Okay. Let me. There's a good deal of our listeners are not lawyers, and I want to talk a little bit about some nuts and bolts so people can understand the context a little bit. I know that people tend to get outraged when they hear that someone, for example, got probation or diversion, but I don't think people really understand what probation is, or how it works, or how it might even extend the time that the court has the power or the justice system has the power to monitor someone's behavior. Could you explain?
When someone's granted probation, it has teeth. Probation includes conditions that the probationer, the defendant, must comply with. And for the mentally ill, those conditions typically are that they be involved in mental health care.
Okay. I had a case. I mean, it's done with, and I'll talk about it in the abstract. But I had a case where a mentally ill individual thought that he was being chased by people, and he ran to a police station, and they said, "Listen, you're crazy. You're not being chased by anybody." So he ran for 20 blocks, and he thought he was being chased again, and he began to bang on a door, and he broke a window, and the people inside were really, really scared, and they said, "We're going to call the police." And he said, "No, don't call the police. They didn't help." Now, let's just take an abstract. Let's say he was looking at 3 years in jail as a potential sentence, and a bench officer wanted to instead try to affect his problem and put him on probation. What kind of terms could you impose, and what kind of?
Well, the probationary period would be typically 3 years. It could be as long as 5 years, and the conditions of that probation would be that the person attend a mental health program that's being monitored either by the Department of Mental Health or the probation department. That bench officer should require routine, periodic progress reports, monthly, bi-monthly, to make sure the person's complying. And there's a lot of monitoring involved. You just don't sentence somebody and then forget about them. You watch them.
And then what happens? Let's say you put someone on probation for 3 years, and they could have gone to jail for 3 years, and they're 2 years into it, and the person says, "Forget it. I'm not going to go to the doctor anymore," or they don't. What could a judge then do?
Well, the judge could impose a state prison sentence, because when you're put on probation, what's happening is the judge is reserving the right to impose state prison at a later date. So if a person violates probation, that person is risking going to state prison. So in your hypothetical, that person can end up going to state prison for 3 years.
Exactly. So it seems to me as though if the option is send somebody for 3 years, or put them on probation for 3 or 5 years under and then hold on to the capacity to incarcerate them if they don't, you're actually extending the amount of time that the law enforcement system and the judicial system has over that person's conduct.
I think that's correct. That's correct. Once you send someone to prison, you've lost all control over them. They just do their time, and they leave custody and most likely reoffend.
And according to the Department of Justice, it seems as though the conditions, especially for the mentally ill, are going to aggravate aggravate their condition. And so there would be.
Yeah, I think that's clearly the case, and it's also astounding, absolutely astounding, how many mentally ill people we have locked up in the county jail. What's happened is that we've criminalized mental illness. That's not to say that all mentally ill people get arrested. They don't. I mean, it's still a minority that get arrested and get in trouble with the criminal law. But to a large extent, we have criminalized mental health problems, and we're requiring the criminal justice system to deal with these problems when they're really best handled by the mental health system.
And is that the result of a lack of advocacy, or do you think there's maybe a public sentiment against, or do you know? I mean, I know that's not a legal question.
It's a lack of treatment. It's unfortunate, but there is a definite lack of mental health treatment available to people who can't afford to pay for it. Now, maybe things will change gradually under Obamacare. That's in the process being formulated right now, where the right to mental health care is being elevated to the same level as the right to physical health care. But for years,
I have the impression. Sorry.
Go on.
Well, I have the impression that Obamacare, I mean, and that's true, and that we're definitely making steps in the right direction. But the clients that I come into contact with who are afflicted with mental illness, they're not going to know how to, go to a place to log onto a computer or even have the facilities in place to get these benefits in the near future. They're probably going to be the last wave of people who are able to avail themselves.
Well, I think that's correct. Yes. So what often happens is a lot of the I see different types of people. I see people that are mentally ill that really have never had any help. Then they get themselves arrested, and lo and behold, they're put in contact with treatment. Others have a long history of being treated ineffectively, and we just keep trying. I mean, it is very difficult to deal with people that have schizophrenia, especially people who won't take medications.
Sure, and I guess that's where the sort of the monitoring steps in. Can you talk about the other word that we get to use a lot in the court is diversion, and I think when I try to explain that to people who don't understand, I'm saying, okay, well, this client, I want to get them a diversion, and they think that anything that is not jail is perhaps not a sufficient a punishment, and that may come in from a misunderstanding of what a diversion program is. Can you speak a little bit about?
Well, I can. I can spend a diversion more generally is just the notion of diverting people out of the criminal justice system into treatment, and that can involve putting people on probation, getting them out of jail into probation and treatment. More specifically, diversion in the legal sense can mean giving someone treatment instead of prosecuting them. For example, first-time drug offenders can be diverted, meaning that instead of facing prosecution, they can complete a treatment program and get the case dismissed. There are no diversion programs in place for the mentally ill currently.
So there's official or there's lawfully enacted diversion programs for first-time drug offenders, but you're saying there's no. And I believe that there's programs available for the developmentally disabled,
That's correct.
People who may have lower IQs, but there's none in place for people who may have a history of documented mental illness.
None in a formal sense. Now, individual courts and prosecutors can come up with vehicles to accomplish this. In my court, from time to time, the DA sees someone who's mentally ill and decides that we'll have the person do treatment and drop the case. It does happen occasionally. More typically, though, what happens is the person pleads guilty, is put on probation, and then is provided treatment. Now, that latter scenario, in the loose sense, is diversion, but not in the legal sense.
Let me add to that, because I think a lot of people don't understand that there's two parts to a criminal conviction. There's usually a plea and a sentence. And an individual is, please tell me if I'm correct, but an individual is not deemed convicted of a crime until they're sentenced. Is that a fair?
That's correct. And actually with drug diversion, people plead guilty, and then they're awaiting sentence. If they complete the drug program, the case is dismissed without them being sentenced. You're not convicted until you've been sentenced.
And people who have
in the legal sense.
Okay, and people who have mental illness, they already, because of the problems that they suffer, have a hard time getting employment. They have a hard time finding a place to live. Would you agree with that? Or a harder?
I agree, and the mental health programs that are in place, for example, some of them are called Full Service Partnership (FSP). They provide wraparound services for the mentally ill. They provide medication management, psychotherapy, job training, assistance with housing. Get these people back on their feet.
So it seems to be. So I think then one of the options. Let's take we have a mentally ill first-time offender, or who's brought in. Maybe they're young. Maybe they've just gotten out. They've gotten out of juvie, so their prior conduct's not considered to be criminal. They're out trying to get a job. They're dealing with the personal afflictions that they have. The options are take them, incarcerate them, give them a criminal conviction, which would certainly harm their capacity to live a meaningful life within society, or provide actual treatment for them. They could teach them how to get a job, how to get a place to live, and not saddle them with that conviction. Is that an overgeneralization?
Approach? Yes,
Yeah, it just seems to be, it's surprising that this is not statutory enacted to me. It seems to be such a more common sense decision, and it's also a cheaper decision as far as what it costs. Is that right?
Well, it's costly to prosecute somebody. It's certainly costly to incarcerate them. Treatment isn't free, but it's much cheaper than incarceration. Much cheaper, maybe a third of the cost.
As I talk to, as I try to negotiate diversion programs for my own clients, who suffer from mental illness, I'm frequently hit with pushback from people who have stated simply, I don't believe that diversion programs work. Do you believe that's true? Do you believe that they need help? What can we do to make them work?
Well, my subjective experience, I've been doing this for years, placing the mentally ill into treatment programs. It is effective. Now, a very, very high percentage of them succeed and don't come back into the system. Unfortunately, there are others that reoffend, and we see again and again. And those reoffenders are the ones that take a great deal of our time. But my experience is, my observation is, these programs are effective, and they keep people from getting themselves back into the criminal justice system.
And they seem to be economically prudent as well. They seem to be saving taxpayers' money as well.
Much cheaper. The money that the county would spend on creating 3,000 mental health hospital beds in the county jail system could be much better spent on treatment programs and accommodate far larger number of mentally ill people in treatment. I'm not saying that we don't need some mental health beds in the county jail system, because there are some mentally ill offenders who are dangerous, who are incorrigible, who are difficult to handle, and need to be locked up while they're getting mental health treatment. But they're a minority.
Okay, and there's no reason why these programs couldn't be tiered and stacked together. I mean, if someone is not convicted until they're sentenced, in theory, someone could be given a diversion program and try to go out and get the help that they need on their own, and get the programs that they need by their own. And if that doesn't work, they could be sentenced. And could they then be put on probation, or would they automatically be incarcerated?
Well, it depends on what offense they're accused of, what they're convicted of. But this tiered approach you're describing is used with drug offenders. I mean, a first-time drug offender gets diversion, meaning case gets dismissed or the person completes the drug treatment. A second offender gets what's called Prop 36 treatment, which is a different level of treatment where people are protected from being incarcerated. And then beyond that, people that keep reoffending, then they're typically put on probation, regular probation with treatment. And so there are tiers to this. In fact, there are some drug treatment programs in the state prison system for those who have been immune to treatment on the streets.
Now, why do you think that there are legislatively enacted diversion programs for drug offenders, but not for mentally ill? And what can be done to change that?
Well, I'm not sure what the reason is. I think that there's been a limited awareness of the scope of this mental health problem. The awareness is increasing dramatically, though, in recent years, and more people are aware of the fact we need to deal with this in a sensible, civilized way.
Do you think it might be because there's I think that maybe is there a stigma, such a stigma associated with mental illness that's not associated with the physical illness that keeps it out of the public dialogue? Or it's just a question that I have. I just wonder why there's not more legislative action to fix this problem, not even from an empathetic level, but from an economic and societal safety level.
I think that's correct. It's a stigma. It's also been a problem we've swept under the rug. When the state years ago closed all the mental hospitals and released the mentally ill to the streets, that was all fine and well, except that there's no treatment to help those people. And so instead they were just cut loose, and now we have an enormous homeless population, which is very visible. And the homeless populations remind us of the scope of this mental health issue we've got.
And the homeless population, they're also pretty cut out from resources, even government living subsidies. I mean, these tend to be people who don't have the capacity to the administrative skills to get what limited benefits may be available to them.
Well, I think that's true. And by the way, not all homeless people are mentally ill, but I think the rule of thumb is that about half the homeless population is mentally ill.
About half.
Yeah.
That's a substantial number.
It sure is.
Okay. Well, let me ask you just if you can, just sort of to chime in. And was it one of your closing thoughts? And this is a central theme that I'm trying to promote. I tend to believe that there from the bench there is compassion embedded in the law, but legislatively and certainly as people speak about the problem, there tends to be a lack of compassion for anybody who is accused of a crime, and be they poor, be they mentally ill, be they culturally different. If you can you comment on the case, or do you have any advice as to what people can maybe do to change that?
Well, I tell you, I think you're correct, but I think that things are changing rapidly. Our district attorney, Jackie Lacey, is pushing very hard to create more awareness of the mental health problem and how to deal with it in a constructive fashion. And that's very hopeful when the head prosecutor of a county takes that position. And I think increasingly the bench, the judges in this county are becoming aware of it. But how mental health problems are handled can vary courthouse to courthouse. There are pockets where it's dealt with in a humane, sensible way. Other pockets that basically still ignore the issue.
Okay. Well, hopefully I will learn and ask questions and know for my clients know which courts are which.
That's your job as a defense attorney, right?
That is my job. We're not supposed to forum shop, especially in the civil construct, but we certainly, it is potentially a necessary part of practice. Your Honor, thank you so much, not only for being on the show, but thank you for what you wrote. Thank you for helping shed light on this condition, and thank you for the work that you do. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay.
Okay, please, we hope to have you back. Thanks so much.
Okay. So long.
Well, that was exceptionally insightful, especially for me, and I hope for you as a listener. I want to talk a little bit more about the trial that's going on of these deputies who've been charged in the LA County Jail matter. Last week, during the trial, the first trial is going on. It's with 6 of the 21 deputies who were indicted, and one of the defendant Stephen Levins, stated that he moved this FBI informant at the direction of then-Sheriff Lee Baca. He said, hey, listen, yes, I moved the guy around. Yes, I might have helped in changing his name in the computer, but I didn't do that to hide him from the FBI or to get information from him. I did it because I was told to. The defense seems to be arguing that these people were trying to impede an FBI investigation or violate civil rights, but they actually argued that no, we did this to protect this inmate from having other inmates know that he was a snitch. I think that's a weak defense. I think the idea that they were simply following orders is the Nuremberg defense. And on one hand, the Nuremberg defense it's not a recognized legal defense. You don't get a get out of jail free card because you say, hey, what I did, somebody told me to do. It might be sympathetic and compelling to a jury. It could work, but I have to say I hope not. I do believe that a very bare. I understand that people don't want to punish police officers for misconduct, but at the very minimum, we need to hold police officers to the same standards as those individuals that they arrest. Otherwise, the entire system is a mockery. I want to give a special thanks out to Judge Smerling for coming on the show, for helping us sort of understand the underpinnings of the criminal justice system, how we treat the mentally ill, what needs to change. I found it very hopeful. I think that we actually have a chance at bringing not only this dialogue into the public dialogue, but also finding a way to better their lives and make us safer along the line. So we're going to close out our show right now. Special thanks to Judge Smerling for that. Big props out to my producers in New York, Mark Goldman and Ryan McCormick. Listen, I want to hear your thoughts. So you have thoughts on today's show. If you have thoughts on the future, please email me at change@renovatejustice.com. You can also go ahead and follow my blog at renovatejustice.com, and that's talking about the blog of what we do as far as judicial reform and criminal justice reform, or my blog at trialfiend.com. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for being here today. Please keep remembering. Let's keep using our heads. Let's stop using our hate. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.